Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inspected Goals, the pod that tries to improve our FPL play for a more analytical approach. I'm Luke, and I'm joined as ever by Sam. Sam's on wildcard this week. I just literally spanked mine last week for no apparent reason. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, I'm all good. Yeah, had a good week. Yeah, and FPL was good. Yeah, I did well this week, which is nice. Feels like a change this season. And yeah, didn't wild card, but that is for me. It was a fairly straightforward decision. I mean, you've said then that you spanked yours. You didn't need to. Do you think that was actually the case? Like looking back, do you think it was a bit unnecessary,
Oh,
even if you had have done well, or you've not done badly actually, or do you feel like it was also, don't know, was it a bit for the sake of it? Do you think?
I think it's just because I had so much time on my hands that I just kept looking at it, and for me, it was EV positive, very slightly, or expected points positive for my team, but literally by like one or two. So I think, forget the result. I mean, I put a tweet out about it anyway. I think in those scenarios, I need to learn to wait for the gain's not enough to therefore go early, right? Because the information that you will have gained, for example, I didn't go with Sanchez, but I was bloody close. That
Mhm.
could have happened to me. You know, Chelsea have sort of reared their heads this week as well. Obviously, just anything could have happened in that week anyway. You know, someone could have got injured. Tony could have got a yellow. There was plenty of other reasons that I could have just held off for that little bit. And my team was really good for that week. I mean, I was confident in the team. I made those hits last week to get that team for this week. Aside from the Liverpool players, like I thought the Liverpool players would be fine. Like most people thought they'd be okay. But if you said to me, would you prefer Salah or would you prefer Kane this week? I would have taken Kane over Salah all day,
Oh
all
yeah,
day.
yeah,
So that
100%.
so that sort of factored in a little bit, I guess. So yeah, I think for me, it's not just because of the outcome. I think I should have waited regardless because
Hmm.
I'm jealous of people doing their wild card. Although they're very, very similar, as we're going to see. I think with that added information, that added week, it would have been good for me. And I mean, it's also, I suppose, just a bit of depressing when you get someone like Brennan Johnson and no one else in the community's got him. I think only Mark Summons is the only other person I know who's actually got him. I think maybe one other person actually, but I'm
Any
sure
sports forest.
any sports for us, yeah. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's others, but I got him in that week last week, not expecting him to do anything because I thought he might do something this week, and then you sell him before he goes and gets us a brace. It's kind of frustrating. I would have
Yeah,
ended
that's
up
brutal.
on 98 points if I was hit by a bus, but I don't even claim that because that would have been with Salah captain, and
Yeah.
I was never going to captain Salah. I probably would have done Darwin to Tony. That was the most likely. However, review actually really liked Pereira to Matoma. Now, if I'd have
Hmm.
done that move and then somehow got hit by a bus and captain Salah, I'd have ended up on something ridiculous like 115 points or something. But it's not, it's not worth thinking about. In the end, my
No.
wildcard team actually performed pretty well compared to other wildcards. And when I look at what the real difference is, so I had Trent, I've switched to Estupinan. There's not much difference there. Tony to Darwin, a little bit of difference. I had Matoma, but then I had Brennan Johnson, so again quite similar. So really, the difference was Kane versus Salah. That was the big
Yeah.
difference in my team,
Mhm.
and I don't think anyone. I mean, we've been championing Salah and owned Salah for nearly all of the season, and I love the guy and think he can do it any game. But to sort of predict 21 points
Yeah.
is probably not. It's not within the realms of my possibilities at least. So that's about the difference in the team. It's just not nice, is it, to use a chip and end up getting less points? But it happens to us all, and it happens every season, and it will happen again. I'm sure it will.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I think that was really the main thing was Kane, and then and then because up until the Sunday, like even with that Kane blank, it was looking fine for wildcarders. Like it was team dependent. Like generally, wildcarders were probably doing slightly better than non-wildcarders, as you'd expect. But yeah, it was apart from that, it was purely just Salah, wasn't it? And it was also just quite a topsy-turvy week. Like again, I think did you captain Haaland as well?
I captained Haaland. Yeah, I was always going to
Yeah,
captain Haaland, but obviously there's only about what was there, four. There's 2 points in it, wasn't it, between them? Yeah.
yeah. But even that game, like when he finished, he didn't actually blank, did he? But he got 4 points,
Mm.
and I was like fully prepared for Saka to. I expected Saka to return.
I
The
got
fact
I
that
got
none,
away
the
with that.
fact that the fact none of their attackers returned is mad,
Yeah, I
to be
got
honest.
I got away with that. I mean,
Same,
they got
yeah, yeah,
absolutely destroyed Bournemouth, didn't they?
yeah, yeah. Mate, I got away with it as well. And it was really close. I was close on captaincy between those two. But yeah, Bournemouth are really shocking in terms of the chances they gave up and the fact they conceded 3 goals. And those three weren't Erdegaard, Martinelli, or Saka weren't involved in any is just completely ridiculous.
Mm.
And then yeah, with with Salah, um, yeah, I'm exactly the same as you. Like we've had him for ages. I was the same with Darwin, so I actually did the Darwin to Tony move, but that's because I couldn't find a move to do with my team. Honestly, I was struggling. I knew I needed to make a transfer because I was wild carding this week. Otherwise, it'd have been a really easy roll. Um, and yeah, and Darwin to Tony was the only one that like really stuck out to me because I didn't expect Man United Liverpool to go as it did. I thought that game would probably be 1-0 or 1-1 or something like that. So I wasn't particularly worried about not having Darwin. But yeah, it's classic, isn't it? Because it's just classic FPL. Like I didn't even have him in 16 when he scored a couple of goals. I've owned him from 17 all the way through.
Yeah.
and then then he's sold him, and then he's got 2 goals again. Classic. But yeah, I was fortunate. I was more lucky that other people wildcarded because I got 58 points, which is good, really good this week, but not compared to lots of other people who didn't wildcard, who like kept Darwin, for example. It wasn't great. And if like loads of people hadn't wildcarded, it'd have been another really bad week. But that's just the randomness of football, isn't it? Like it's just 7-0 is just like completely bonkers. It was 1-0 at half time as well.
Yeah.
Score 6 in the second half.
I know, it's crazy. But it's so funny, isn't it, when you actually watch a game? Because sometimes you watch a game of football and you think these people could play for like 9 months and no one's scoring a goal here. And then you watch a game like that and it's just every single attack and chance just flies in the net. Yeah. It just seems like it's so easy. It feels like every game should be like that.
Yeah, because Salah, like even the chances Salah created, so particularly the one for Gakpo, was like a big angle for Gakpo to score from. And the assist to Firmino, like he played him through, he wasn't then suddenly clean through on goal. He had to take a touch, which was initially a bit heavy, and then he scored a difficult chance. And then the volley he scored, again, it's a pretty good chance, but actually it had to be a really good finish to score from there.
Yeah.
And it had to take a really nice deflection to bounce up for him. So yeah, sometimes it's just what happens. Well, like everything went their way. They had 8 shots on target and 7 of them went in.
Wow. Yeah, those have been coming off the bar, haven't they, in recent weeks for Salah? And then suddenly,
they have.
Suddenly they fly in. Yeah, it's crazy. I think, I don't know, I suppose there's more to it than that. You just have to have a good season overall. But similar to your season last season, I guess a lot of these really swingy moments where there was like a big change between the field, you were probably on the right side of them more often than not. Like this season, it feels like I've been on the wrong side. Or to be honest, the last few seasons, it feels like I've been on the wrong side of them more often than not. Like far off. I wonder if that's just because you remember the real bad beats, but it does feel that way. I think, honestly, the biggest difference is if you just get... Well, I mean, we know it is really, isn't it? If you play particularly, I was going to say optimal then, but that word's not very liked in the community, is it? If you play good fantasy football by what's on paper, then at the end of the day, you need positive variance to get right at the top ends. There's no two ways about it. You need to be on the right end of some of these swings or just consistently have, a little bit of luck every week or whatever it is to get right up the top echelon. So hopefully we'll get it back again. You've already had your moment in the sun. That's not happening again for you for like another 15 years, just to let you know.
No, probably not actually.
No, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will.
I doubt I'll ever finish that high again. But I think it's a funny thing because when I play other games, like for example, I quite like board games. Like I generally prefer board games that are more skill based. Just I like the idea of like trying to. Like it's that feeling that you've succeeded when you've won, etc., and be able to take more credit for it. But the randomness within a game makes it fun. Like there's a reason there's so many dice games because that randomness makes for exciting games. So I think normally I wouldn't like a game like FPL where you can do so much, but it relies heavily on luck. But it's because I love football, and actually, it's that randomness like is what makes the highs so high as well. Because any incredible game week you have, you've always got very lucky. You never expect to outscore the field by outscore the average by 30 points, for example. That's always going to be luck on top of that.
And plus, everyone's good. Everyone's good nowadays, aren't they? So if you're going into a game week and your team looks incredible, the chances are most people's team also looks incredible because they've probably got to the same similar position to you. It's like...
Sorry, go on, mate.
I was just going to say there's a lot of chat in the community about the hysteria of the wild card this week, and I think there probably was an element of that a little bit. But I come back to what I always come back to is if you're at a certain level in this game in terms of engagement, the amount of time you spend on it, you're all presented with the same information. And I honestly believe if I was locked away in a room without that, I'd probably come to the same conclusion. Maybe not me, maybe because my team was so good and there was other, the price rises and there are other factors. But I think people give it a little bit too much weight in general. For literally, if they are an engaged manager, I think if you're just on the cusp and you're tuning into other YouTubers to find out what to do when they're doing it, yes, I think that might sway you. But as individuals who like to think that they take ownership of their own team and they make their own decisions and whatever, I believe they would have probably come to a similar solution. Team dependent, of course. If you come to the solution, you didn't need to lose it like you did, then absolutely fine. That's cool. And I don't think we can then turn around, like I can't turn around and say content creators made me play that wild card. Like, absolutely not. I did it. Wish I didn't, but I did do it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think saying that people have done it because there's like a group thing, or because of Twitter or because of content creators, that does a massive discredit to those people who play the game. Like, just because loads of people have done something, it's gone badly, doesn't suddenly mean that content creators are to blame, for example. Like, that's just like most people who are engaged think it through for their team specifically. So like you said, it's doing a disservice to people who like really enjoy playing the game and like spend time thinking about it. And like and also just there are plenty of people who didn't wildcard like me who are like willing to acknowledge that Salah haul was really lucky. Like, it was crazy. And like, I think it's important that we acknowledge that even when we spend so much time talking about bad luck, particularly this season. But no, it's important to acknowledge when you've been lucky as well. Like, there's no way I expected that to happen.
No, I mean
at all. And it's like I've heard you compare it to like poker before, which is just like the perfect example, really, isn't it? Because you can constantly make logical decisions, and you do your best to learn how to make logical decisions and apply that as much as possible. But ultimately, you can get a really bad beat or get really, really lucky, and you can get drawn pocket aces, or you can be on for something. And yes, exactly. So I'm getting shown up here for not knowing a lot about poker. I'm trying to think of something.
You covered it well for a while, but
something on the river. The river, that's the last card, isn't it?
Oh, well done. The turn in the river. Yeah, you're almost there.
But like stuff like that's just completely out of your hands. That's all you can do. And you just got to try and do things consistently as much as you can. Well,
we were a Salah 2-pointer away from this game week being a non-event, pretty much. That's the bottom line. I think if Salah gets 2 points and people wildcard, yes, it didn't do that good overall, but it's more about the setup and what's to come, isn't it?
Even if he scored 1, mate.
Yeah.
Like, even if he didn't blank, even if he scored 1 or got like 10 points. Because I feel a bit like that.
I think the majority who did wildcard, not the majority, but a lot of people would have had Darwin and probably done Darwin to Tony. So if anything, the event would have been, I'm annoyed I took out Darwin for Tony.
Yeah. There's a guy in the chat called Grafting Diamond has put, so disappointed as someone who didn't wildcard in 26. I predicted a 12-0 Liverpool win against United, so was very disappointed to come away with only 27 points in total, stung by negative variance again.
Very good. Yeah, that is the thing. Anyway, let's stop moaning and let's look forward, because that's all we can do. I've brought up the fixtures by our mate Ben Crellin as usual. Only up to 34. Obviously, he does go further forward than that on his planner and predict some of the 37 ones as well. I think I mentioned it last time as well. FPL.team, if you're not using that, that's very useful. You can also load fixtures as predicted by Planet FPL's James, who's pretty good at these sort of things, which has helped me to sort of build in plans and visualize it. So I've been using that as well. And I don't know if you have, Sam, to build your wild card, but we're going to...
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, you've been using it.
Yeah, it's such a good app. Well, do you use the desktop or the app?
I don't use the app. I didn't even know there was an app until someone told me. They said that they couldn't load fixtures or something. Yeah,
it's really good. It's like it's basically just like, it's very similar to opening the transfer page on the Premier League app, but you can just get forward game weeks. So the guy who runs that's called Peter. Just give him a shout out. So give him a follow on Twitter. But yeah, it's really, really helpful because it's just so hard to kind of picture that in your head otherwise, because you will see it on things like when you use review, but then even on review you can't see the fixtures when you look at your team page. So it just helps you really to visualize it and not just see numbers, but actually to see who your players are playing.
I agree.
So I found that really useful. So did you use that a lot in planning your wildcard as well, Luke?
Yeah,
and how far ahead were you looking?
I mean, I did it the whole way a few times. I know I'm not stupid enough to think that that's what will actually happen. Anything can happen in that time, injuries, whatever. But I've always particularly because I play other games like Sky, where the prices are fixed and you've got a fixed amount of transfers. I've always played FPL in the way where I've had a plan for a long time, and that's often been my downfall, where I've kind of had something in my mind I'm going to do in 9 weeks and want to stick to it when really I should have changed it or whatever. But I still think it's useful to have, right, just to visualise where it goes. I don't think it's maybe as important this time, simply because we don't know some of the fixtures in 34/7. We don't know where that Brighton Newcastle game will go. There's other factors. I think the Champions League. That there's other things that are just, I think, can affect it more than we probably anticipate right now. So probably not as important. Also, I was going to say the money. Like before, I'd want to look to say game week 37, 38 and think, right, can I have the perfect team for these doubles? Or in 34, 37, can I have Salah, Trent, Haaland, triple Man City? Can I afford it all? And although I have factored that in, because the money's a lot better this season, it's probably not as important to make every sort of scrimping. But it was a big part of my wildcard, I will say that now, because when I made my wildcard in 26, I pretty much picked like the cheapest options I could, where there was if a player was similar, so there was like a Shah or a Botman, or there was even Henry from Brentford. I pretty much went for the cheapest option, just because I didn't think there was enough between them to sort of go for the more expensive option, because I wanted to save that money for later on if I do want to get all these players in.
Yeah.
I don't know if you factored that in with your wildcard now, but
yeah, I did that with a couple of options, but a couple where I went for the slightly more expensive player if I felt there was a good enough reason to. But yeah, also I looked ahead just to check, because there are a couple of moves that when I get onto it, I want to make in 30 and 31, where I'm like, I need like 0.2 give, for example, to be able to make the move. So again, you might just going with, I don't know, for example, Ward instead of Kepa, and freeing up like 1.5 million or about 1 million in that one move. Is it something that gives you a lot more leeway?
yeah.
So yeah, it really helps you to consider that for sure.
Before I get to your wildcard team, actually, was there any consideration not to wildcard this week? Was it always the plan and that's what you were going to do, or have you sort of looked at it since and thought there might be an alternative, or it's just that's what you're doing?
It was always the plan, yeah. So I instinctively, it's what I thought I should be doing anyway, just from looking at my team. I always try and make decisions before I look at review. I kind of go to that afterwards, just because I like to come at it just on my own first. And yeah, instinctively, that's what I thought I should be doing, and particularly because I've currently only got only got Dunk from Brighton,
right,
and no Brentford players until I bought in Tony last week. So I'd be going into 26 with very few Brighton and Brentford. If I was to not wildcard until a lot later on, again, it then means that I'd kind of just need to bring in Brentford players over the next couple of game weeks, because they double and blank. So it was really restrictive. And just my team for people in 27 who have still got Trent and Darwin, again, that's a bit easier when they've got such a good fixture, whereas I sold Darwin last week as well. So that was another reason. So it was always the plan before 26, and that didn't change at all. And then I kind of ran it through review just with like default settings, and there was quite a significant difference even over like 9 game weeks. And I think as well, if it's close and you can kind of bank those points earlier, I think there's kind of a lot to be said for that, because there's so much uncertainty later on and you don't know how things will change. So if you're currently like really well set up for a bench boost, or you can get really well set up for one with a wild card, for example, like doing it now just kind of makes more sense. If suddenly you get to 34 and that double doesn't look great at all, and you've then got to wild card and probably have a really similar team to other people, that's really frustrating. So yeah, but basically since it turned out that the later doubles aren't going to be very good, my plan changed. My initial plan was always to actually go through from 27 all the way through to 29 with no chips at all, and then those FA Cup upsets happened, and that just obviously changed everything.
I think that was similar for everyone. I think I'd probably have done the same as well. I was very much of the opinion that a lot of the teams that double in 34 also double in 37. So if you could get to 33 and wildcard, it made perfect sense, I thought, till then, if you could get through it. But it just didn't really fall that way. I still actually really do like that strategy, though. Just want to touch on that now. I know that, and anyone who's looked will see that pretty much our transfers, sort of after 29, so 30, 31, depends if you're free hitting in 32 or not, I suppose, 33, you start gearing towards getting those players in. So the likes of Liverpool and Man City, pretty much. Man United as well, you could argue. You can kind of use them, but there's still only a limited amount, and it's still hard to move all the players and get the perfect ones. And using that FPL team, it becomes very apparent that there are many, many weeks where my bench just looks incredible. Like, not yeah, just literally 30, 31, like 33, 34, 5, 6, 7, 38. Like, there is benching headaches every single week. And even despite that, so that's one. I think that's one thing to say why I didn't want to use the wild card late, was because I thought, well, my team's good as it is anyway. It looks good the whole way through. I can make it, and it looks good, but it's still not perfect. I would say, in terms of my mind of, if I was able to wild card in 33 and literally say, well, I'll have Trent, Darwin, Salah. I'll have, I don't know, Edison, Haaland, Foden if he's in form at that point. That sort of thing, where you're literally going to pick the three best of each one. I don't know whether I'll ever get to a position where I'll be able to do all of that. I think I'll have to make do in some areas, as we get there, because we just don't have enough transfers to sort it perfectly.
Yeah, it's true. It's just depending how those fall, isn't it? So, for example, everyone in 34, if that goes ahead, will already have 3 Brighton. You'd expect anyway at that point.
Yeah, you have to keep him pretty much the whole season now, I think.
I'd imagine everyone will already have Haaland by then. They'll have got him back in by that point. Lots of people will have 2 Man United because they'll have got them in time for 29.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like 6 or 7 of your starting 11 already. So yeah, it just depends how they fall, doesn't it? But even for those ones like West Ham, for example, where no one's likely to own the players, they play Man City potentially within that double. So yeah, it just fell really unkindly, I think, in general. With those, it was crazy, wasn't it? It was like a 1% or less than 1% chance of both Sheffield United and Grimsby both winning, which was the only chance that Kane would play in, or that Spurs would play in blank game week 28, and it happened. That was totally nuts.
Yeah, welcome to FPL, welcome to football. It happens. Yeah. If it can happen, it will happen.
Who would Grimsby playing in the quarterfinals? I can't remember now.
Oh, I don't know. Someone in the chat will say. I never keep up with the cup.
Someone will tell us. Yeah, it's pretty massive that for them being FA Cup quarterfinal.
Hope they win.
Yeah. Even though it's made FPL a bit less exciting and made more of us do the same thing.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I just think one thing as well that I think you can't underestimate for anyone who's wildcarding this week is just to really think about 30 and 31. Just because it's very easy to kind of just stop thinking as soon as you get to 29, but just thinking beyond that is really important. And I can see you brought up my very, very boring wildcard team there.
Yeah, you stole my phrase. When you sent me this, I was just like, I was expecting at least one juicy pick in there. I think for you, like Maddison, is that like where your spice is in the Maddison? Because apart from that, I was struggling, I'll be honest, to find any.
Yeah, no, there's not a lot of spice in there, really, is there? Yeah, so I guess I just felt like as I was doing a lot of the positions, like a lot of people said last week on 26, you like picked themselves. Like there were a lot of picks that were just really, really straightforward, and it's just been like 3 or 4 I've been thinking over, and this is like by no means like finalised at all either. This is just where I think I'll end up. But even things like the goalkeeper rotation is really obvious. You're forced into having 3 Brighton for sure, and it's quite obvious. You're going to have 3 of 4 players basically, or 2 of 3 attackers. Saka and Rashford are pretty straightforward. Yeah. Apologise for the lack of spice, but I've not picked them because they're highly owned at all. It's because I think that the players will get the most points.
Okay, well, let's start at the back then. Why have you gone for Raya and Kepa?
Partly because of the rotation, in terms of from now until the end of the season in general is really good. So there's a chance I'll end up using both keepers. I think Kepa's massively underpriced as well at 4.6. Raya is a bit of a no-brainer, just because he's a way into getting Brentford players, which particularly for the next 3 game weeks, you've got double. They play when other people blank, then they double again. There are other keepers I've looked at as well, which I can go over, and I'm not 100%. That's not what I'm 100% set on. I'm 100% set on Raya, but not necessarily Kepa. So I'm considering maybe like Pope and not going for another Newcastle defender. That's an option. But again, he's quite expensive. De Gea is definitely an option if people want to go there, particularly because they've got a really good double in 29 for the bench boost. And yeah, I think the one I'm likely to go to, which would be if I change my strategy elsewhere or if I realise I need funds for something further down the line, would be to go for Ward, because actually Brentford's fixture in 28 is really nice against Leicester. So I can.
He plays for Leicester.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Brentford's Raya's fixture is what I mean against Leicester. So I'll happily play Raya then rather than Kepa. And means I only really need Ward for the bench boost, and then Raya until the end of the season is fine. But yeah, I just really like the rotation with Kepa.
Okay, yeah, cool. I've brought up the top 10 goalkeepers as per FPL review. We did it it's 9 weeks, isn't it, Sam? Yeah, I don't want to count that out loud and embarrass myself.
Yeah.
those on the pod obviously won't be able to see it, but we've got Pope at the top, Raya, Allison, Guita, Pricey Pope, yeah, Kepa, Ramsdale, Ward, Martinez, De Gea, and Meslier. Pope being right at the top, I haven't looked at the wild card myself for obvious reasons because I already used it, but Pope does come up pretty quickly, I think, in solves, especially if you put in that Newcastle Brighton game in 31 that James seems to think it might be. The double's pretty great in that, isn't it? I think. Well, actually, no, it's not as good as that. It's home to Brighton, which you could say, I don't know whether you call a clean sheet in that or not, to be honest, the way Brighton are attacking. Probably brave. And away to Villa. I think it's okay, though. I mean, it's definitely the standout defensive fixture of 31, just being the fact that it's a double. So I think that's an obvious move. So you're not tempted to just start with him and then just save that transfer later? But you've already got the triple Newcastle, I suppose. So that's the way you've looked at it, isn't it? The triple defence.
Yeah, I've got the triple defence anyway, and then Raya's fixture, where Raya's got Wolves in the 31. So I think if Raya had like Man City or something, it would make that a bit more obvious. But yeah, a big thing for me with Pope is just the price. I just feel like it's one I could end up regretting, and it's just $1 million I could have more to spend on outfield that I would potentially regret later.
Yeah, that's fair. I think,
and also the defence. That another big part of it is that Newcastle's defence is just really nailed and consistent. They just like never rotate it ever. The only reason Lascelles didn't play recently was because of the knock he had or concussion. So he just consistently plays the back four. So it feels like it's really, you feel like you'll get to 31 and those three defenders you pick will almost definitely play as well.
Yeah, Shaw didn't play and Lascelles didn't he? Yeah, that way around.
Whereas with Kepa, Chelsea's defence is good, but again for defensive points, there could be so much rotation within the back three, back four, back five, whatever it is. But for Kepa, you'd expect him to just keep playing.
One thing I noticed is that Pope, he's 5.4, which is expensive, and people are probably going to shudder when I say this, but if people are moving to the triple Man City, Ederson's also 5.4, and he is, again, as much as he's been so bad, the obvious pick for Man City, isn't he, for all of the doubles and the stretch that you'd want him in. Like, he's probably the only one who you could say is going to play all of those games, especially if they're in the late Champions League. Like, I think Diaz has got a chance, but if it's like a Everton or a Leeds game, I think, are in between the Champions League semis, for example.
We will be there.
We will be there, yeah, again. He's the exact same price. So I think for people who haven't got him or don't start with him or whatever, I think moving to Pope and then Ederson might be a fairly common theme amongst managers. But it's scary even talking about it now, to be honest. It's making me depressed.
Don't want to think about it.
No.
Too much PTSD. But I genuinely think there's a good chance I'll end up having Ederson then. But I hadn't really thought about that a lot until now, actually. That's a really good point. That's something I need to consider, definitely. And are you saying basically because of the price point, you just know you'll be able to switch and afford it?
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, it's not a massive factor, is it? But if you've already planned out, like I said, when we do, and you sort of plan, I mean, the bottom line is Newcastle might not get that double in 31, and then there's no point in bringing him in really at that point, and it may completely change. It might be 36, 5, 7, whatever. There's loads of places that fixture can go, I think. But if it does fall in 31, it makes sense for my team, I think, to try and get Pope and then move him on to Ederson later. For safety, which is really depressing even thinking of it. But yeah, I can't really argue any of the goalkeepers. The only other one I'd say is like you. I think De Gea serves a purpose early on, but I think Shaw's just better, so I just probably don't want to do that. And then Ward would be the other alternative, like you've mentioned. I don't think I'd probably consider any others.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Right, let's go back to your defence then, because you have got the triple Newcastle defence, but that's for obvious reasons. Dunk and me. Why have you picked me over any of the cheaper ones? That's what I'm interested in.
Bullet header. No. The reason I've got me at the moment is because it's literally that. There's just more chance that if he does get an attacking return, it's going to be a goal rather than an assist. But how much cheaper are Pinnock and Henry?
Well, Pinnock's he's either 4.4 or 4.5. I can't remember. He's got pretty much the exact same stats. I'm not just saying it because he scored, but for me it was either Pinnock or Henry, and of course I went for Henry. I never considered me just because he was too expensive compared to
that's probably what I need to rethink. But at the moment it's just because defensive goals are just so big because they get 6 points, which is mad, by the way, that they get 6 points for a goal. But it's just huge. And if you look at their XGI for all three of those players, it's like almost identical, like 0.11 per 90 or something. So pretty low for a defender.
So yeah, I reckon
in general.
going for Pinnock there and saving yourself. I don't know if it's 0.6 or 0.7 for the reasons I mentioned going further forward.
I
Just
guess, yeah, because if they all had the same XGI and it was like 0.2 or something like that, that's where it might be worth going for me, actually, because you maybe expect something from all of them, but actually there's a good chance that none of them get attacking returns, isn't there, I suppose?
yeah, well,
Um,
Pinnock plays at the back as well, doesn't he? So
mm,
he comes up for the
yeah,
corners.
yeah, okay, that's definitely one to rethink, but yeah, that's all the thought that's gone into it. It's pretty, and the thing that's probably worth chatting about there is actually why I've got me rather than like a Chelsea defender, for example.
That
And again,
was
my answer to that is probably obvious, which is that, do you know what? If Chelsea didn't go through in the Champions League, I think I'd have James. I'm pretty sure, and I might even have James and Chilwell in there. Like, it's just the fact they've got to rotate and still play Champions League football. At least two more fixtures in the Champions League, at least. And just the amount of times that James gets injured is ridiculous. And I just don't think you could ignore that happens. And not only that, but the amount of times he gets subbed early because they know that's the case. Um,
But what about Chilwell though? I mean, surely the advantage this week compared to last week, one of them is that Potter seems to have, I know it's brave to say, stumbled on using the wing-back system. Chelsea looking a lot better, putting some wins together, and Chilwell playing consistently in that position. He's actually played quite a few times in a row now. It looks like he is back from injury, unquote. Because let's be fair, Chilwell, he had a big injuries, as in long-term injuries, but outside that he played. He didn't.
yeah,
It wasn't like James, where we've seen him come back multiple times from. He's had bigger injuries and smaller injuries, and just keeps getting pulled out because of muscle injuries. And they're managing him. I think they were managing Chilwell, but I think you could say now Chilwell's management period is probably over. Like,
probably, yeah.
don't
Yeah,
get me wrong, you
probably.
can get potted at any point. Like, there's no way I'm saying he's just going to play like 100%. But I think that's part of that. His upside is that good that I think picking Chilwell is the real advantage of the wild card so far over the early one. And
Okay.
I personally couldn't not pick Chilwell at this point.
Okay. No, that's really interesting. And I guess you could also make an argument for picking him over Dunk rather than over Brentford defender as well, because then that's an extra player who plays. I would then have 11 players for 28, so that would be an option. Um, but I'd then have to go with Steele in goal probably, which I don't want to do. That feels too risky. So yeah, Chilwell instead of me, or instead of a Brentford defender is definitely a consideration. And actually going for two Brentford defenders is also probably fine because their double isn't as good. In 29, they've got Man United as part of that double.
No, I think if you go for a Brentford defender after 29, you pretty much don't use them again, and that's why I was
Yeah,
saying about picking the cheapest
no,
one
that's a good point.
because
That,
they'll
yeah.
just sit on your bench, and our
Mm.
team's so good every week. You'll either end up moving him. Maybe some people might move him to a Newcastle, like they might move him to a Botman if they get that one in 31 they didn't start, or you just leave him to rot because you literally need one spot in your team that is useless because the team is so good every week. Like I said.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a really good point. Yeah.
so I think you either go as cheap as possible and you just dedicate him to your last on your bench, or you use that slot for someone like a Chilwell.
Yeah, and using that extra money again on me just because he's maybe got a slightly more chance of a goal again. That if that goal does come, it's probably when he's not even playing for my team. He's probably not even starting. So that's a really
Probably.
good point. Yeah, and with Chilwell, it's another big part of it is the fact that I'm bench boosting soon. Like again, if there wasn't the bench boost, I'd be more like to have him as well, just because the nightmare is bench boosting and then one of your players doesn't play any minutes,
Mm,
and then you bench boosted three players rather than four players.
yeah.
If you was to pick up an injury, for example. But yeah, it might be that I'm overthinking the how injury prone Chilwell is, and it might be something you have to look at as well. Because he's obviously had that major injury over the last year, but actually, was it how injury prone was he before that? I can't remember really off the top of my
He
head.
did get another injury as well. He did, to be
Mm.
fair, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that he's just going to get injured again. I don't think it was a
Mm.
muscle thing with Chilwell, was it? I think it was more a knee thing, unless I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah, knee. Mm.
It's a risk
Okay,
at the end of the
interesting.
day. It's worth thinking about because it all looks rosy, and you're right. If you use the bench boost in 29 and then he misses one of the games and he gets a 2-pointer in the other one, it's depressing. But I suppose that can happen to anyone. I just feel the upside appeal of him right now is so good, and he's hard to get to
Yeah.
for other people, that I would be tempted to go with it. And if it backfires, and you just fix it later on. There's plenty of opportunity to switch out that defender for, like we mentioned, Man City later on, or whoever else you want to switch that spot to. Luke Shaw, you probably want to bring in at some point. Trent will probably want to bring in at
Mm.
some point, and you've got that money. You can also say there's more money in that spot as well. Then it makes it a little bit
Yeah,
easier to
yeah.
make that upgrade. I like it
So,
anyway.
no, that's a good point. And yeah, Luke Shaw's a good point as well, because as part of my plan at the moment, which we'll come to, I'm rolling the transfer in 28 and playing 10 players. Then in 29, I'll do Saka to Fernandez. And the other transfer, I'll probably do Kane to Solanke for his two fixtures, but that's not set in stone. And again, there's a bit of flexibility there because Kane's got a good fixture anyway. So I feel like I've kind of got a spare transfer if I need it. So again, that maybe makes having Chilwell a little bit safer, knowing that if the worst came to the worst and he got injured, I'd transfer him out. Or James, but I don't know if I can bring myself to go for James, I'm afraid.
Well, Chilwell's not in the top 10 from review at the moment. I've brought them up here. Trippier, Trent, Dunk, Shaw, Burn, Estupinan, Botman, Gabriel, James and Robertson. Yeah, I don't know if Chilwell... I haven't actually looked at why Chilwell's not in there.
Yeah, the fixtures aren't that great from 32, really. They've got Man United, they've got United, Arsenal and City and Newcastle in 4 out of the last, like, seven or 8 games.
Okay.
Brighton the week before that as well. Liverpool is one of their doubles. Like, it's probably just fixtures.
Yeah, they also blank in 32, don't they? So you have to take that out if you were free hitting. That would change it. Yeah. So fair enough. I can see why. His minutes are probably a little bit low.
Okay. No. Yeah. Possibly. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and then in terms of like triple Newcastle defense, again, I think it's just really easy to go for the triple up because there's the double in 29, but then also they're most likely going to double in 31 as well, and potentially, and they will do probably later in the season as well. So it's just helpful to have 3 of them consistently. You know that those 3 are kind of as nailed as they can be, and there's kind of there's no attacking options I want from Newcastle at the moment at all. And also that they're really they're not that expensive, so they don't take a lot of money on your bench. Because even though it's a triple up, it's 3 players that will all play in 28, and they'll all play in 29 when I bench boost. But actually, most of the other weeks, Trippier will play, and then maybe one of the others. Otherwise, they're just on the bench.
Yeah, I think you can still hold Trippier quite a long time. Again, when I was looking at an FPL team,
definitely.
I think you can just hold him for the season now. But there is an argument to get rid of him. I think it's around 35 from memory. I think they play Arsenal or something, and then the rest of the games are okay. They're like Leeds, Leicester. In fact, let me just bring it up rather than guessing. Yeah,
it's Arsenal in 35.
Yeah. Then they've got Leeds, Leicester, which is okay. That's fine, and then Chelsea away on the last one. But in those 36 and 37, that's when you're probably looking to target, any Man City or whoever else you've not managed to get a triple up on at that point who starts to double and stuff. So that's probably where you start bringing him out. Or just leave him in, like I said. Quickly then, I'll go to this question actually from Wing. He says, just one question. I left one more Brighton slot last game week in my wildcard and still think McAllister is still better than March. What do you guys think?
Good, well-timed question as we move on to the midfield.
Yeah, you can see who Sam went for. I think I'm in agreement as well. So yeah, McAllister for me.
To be honest, I think that Matoma and March is really close. I don't know what it is really close if you look at their underlying data. But for me, if you've got one to pick, McAllister, because penalties are most people underestimate.
Oh, hello. Can people still hear me? Is it my internet that cut or was it Sam's? Let me know in the chat, guys. I'm going to call him back again. Let me know in the chat if you can still see and hear me. I think you can. I'm just going to tell him I cut him off because he was talking shit. Wind him up. Oh, it's Sam's. Cheers, Pete. Yeah, play along. Just say I got bored of him, so just cut him off. You got to give him some stick in the chat, guys, for this wild card. It is so boring, isn't it? It's unbelievable. He's not answering either. So I think his internet must have gone down. He'll have to break out the old Wi-Fi hotspot or whatever it's called. Oh, is he back? Here he is. Was I boring you, mate?
My charger would come out of the laptop and I noticed.
Rookie stuff that is.
I thought you'd cut me off for talking nonsense or something.
It's funny you say that. I was literally just telling the chat that's what I was going to tell you. I just got bored of you and clicked goodbye. Oh, you've redone all the sizing now. Now you're massive again, but it doesn't matter. People will just have to put up with your giant head. Right, where were you?
Yeah. What were we talking about? I don't know what I was talking about when I can't remember. Oh, and
McAllister,
Brighton.
Matoma and
Base,
March are
base,
quite similar, yeah.
basically, penalties are really good. And oh yeah, I think I was about to say that McAllister is yeah, he's playing in a far more advanced role. People have probably heard this all discussed last week for Wildcard in 26, but since McAllister's been playing number 10, his numbers are excellent. Then on top of that, he has penalties. So I think it's just worth the risk that McAllister will keep playing in that role. In which case, at the moment, based on the short-term data we have, it looks really good.
Yeah, Colm saying dunk over the Australia-bound Estupinan. Yeah, I've seen a lot of mention of that. That's fair enough, right? It is literally the other side of the world. So I suppose there could be something in it. But I don't know. I still think I prefer Estupinan just because even if he does miss that game, I just prefer his upside in general. Just playing in a more attacking role. But I completely understand having dunk because he's like a warm sweater, and you know he's going to turn up week in, week out.
Yeah.
And that bullet head is coming, right, Sam? It is coming.
I don't think it's already come, mate, but it came in the FA Cup.
Yeah. He's had like 0 goal threat this season as well, just out of the blue. He's always had like a pretty good, for a centre-back, goal threat. Just barely done anything, but I'm sure it will happen. You know what it's like. You go for the more attacking one and then Dunk ends up scoring, so...
How much threat is there to Stupinan's position? Because I remember in game week 17, one of the reasons I went for Dunk was because he was way more nailed, which I guess he is more nailed now, but actually how much threat is there to a Stupinan apart from maybe getting rested after the international break?
There's pretty much none. I think at the time, because I always went Dunk...
They didn't sign someone, did they?
No, I wanted to go Estupinan at that point, but I thought it was brave because, first of all, he'd been getting subbed. He'd only just started signed for them. Obviously, had the new manager. Trossard was there to begin with, who was playing left wing back under Potter. Matoma had come on a few times and looked really good to me, but he'd actually played at wing back as well, or on the left.
Yeah.
And it wasn't certain that he would go into that front three. And then obviously everything just fell into place. Estupinan started looking good. They got the new manager. Matoma went into the front three because Trossard left. And now it's just like a no-brainer. They just don't really seem to have him on. The thing is, they could play Solly March there. Like, I think Potter played Solly March at left wing back previously, but they're obviously playing a back four, aren't they? So it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen, to be honest.
Yeah. I'm getting absolutely roasted in the chat here for having a boring team.
I wonder why that is. Must have been me.
Yeah, but it's just like, I've just picked the players I think will get the most points. It's that simple. And like, there's a reason they're popular picks.
No, don't feel too bad. I told them to give you some shit while you were away, so it's fine.
You didn't chat about me behind my back too much, did you?
No, not at all, no. I think Maddison's probably the only spicy one. I think Rashford's an absolute no-brainer. I mean, I'm going to bring up your plan here as well quickly. It's you can see that you're going to move to Bruno Fernandes, like just about everyone.
Well, I've got the money in the bank to have Salah instead of Maddison if I wanted. You know, I could have, but I'd get this one great fixture from Salah, but then he blanks. Then his double's not great. He's got Chelsea and Man City. Then after that, he's got Arsenal. So I really think for an extra fixture and better fixtures, I'm better off having Maddison, or Zaha's another one that's like maybe tempting, but he doesn't blank. He doesn't double in 29.
I've just never ever done good off Zaha. It's not a.
Same.
Yeah, I think that's quite a common sort of feeling.
David Campbell says Chilwell instead of triple Newcastle defence. That's a really good question. We're actually, I don't think I'd do that because, unless I went to Pope in goal. But that would definitely be a consideration if I actually went for Pope. Chilwell could probably take up that extra spot because that would be Chelsea coverage as well instead of Kappa. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
I'm not sure if I like Maddison, to be honest with you. I think the games are great.
The games are really great.
The double's fantastic. Did you see Brendan Rodgers' quote today about him?
No.
It was something along the lines of, he's on the pitch, so he's declared himself fit. Which doesn't fill me with confidence, considering he's a player who's been struggling with a knock the whole time and he's missed a few games since the World Cup and he's clearly got sort of managing an issue. Then he said something like, all players are managing some sort of issue. But he's on the pitch, so he's declared himself fit. To me, that reads, he's not quite right, but we're playing him because he's that important. And that would worry me. Yeah, I just think the upside is so high with him. Like, if you watch him in game week 26, the amount of chances he creates. He's good. There's no two ways about it.
The amount of returns he has over the last year. This week his fixtures difficult, but I can happily bench him. He's got Brentford, which is an absolutely fine attacking fixture, and then Palace and Villa, and it's the Bournemouth fixture in 30 as well. So yeah, that's the reason. But yeah, he could be Salah, but I'd lose out on a fixture and have worse fixtures. And when I say that the fixtures are difficult for Salah, like I still expect Salah to. He's still a great pick that week. It's just he's got two of the worst possible fixtures. Anyone playing Man City and Chelsea, for any player, that's one of the worst doubles they could have.
Yeah, I don't want to talk you out of taking him out because literally there would be no spice in your team if you did. So I feel like you have to keep him in.
You could go triple Brighton midfield. That's one option, and then dunk to Chilwell.
I suppose you could do, yeah.
That could be fun.
The only thing with that is, again, I mentioned that I think you pretty much, you don't have to, but it makes sense to keep your triple Brighton that you make now or whenever you make pretty much the whole way through the season. And if you're going to use 3 spots of those on midfielders, you're really limiting your choices because it's pretty much the best position in the game, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, and particularly when you've got players like Rashford and Saka who are so consistently good, having a third Brighton player, even for the double, even as soon as 29, suddenly Bruno Fernandes I can't get, who I really want to get in 29. So that's I think that's quite a fun thing to do, but that's the reason I wouldn't do that. Like the other options, Salah, that is a possibility, but for the reasons I've mentioned, it would mean I play with 9 players in the next game week. Like I fully expect him to return against Bournemouth, but I'm not getting him for one fixture, and it's really tempting because it's right there and it's in the immediate. But there's just I don't know who are the other options apart from Maddison, Zaha, like Ward-Prowse.
No, I don't like that.
No.
I think I'd either just start with Salah or I don't know, because I haven't looked at the wild card. It's hard for me to say. Maybe I would have Maddison, but and at the end of the day, if he does play, I think the game, Cole's put it there. If Leicester score, Maddison will be involved. I mean, I don't doubt that for a second. So yeah, I mean, if he plays, then it's all good, and everything seems to point that he will do. I've just probably been a little bit more paranoid. I think as we move forward, though, that midfield will start to change, and I think you'll see that obviously Bruno's going to come in for a lot of people, which is already planned for you. I think people will probably want to get Salah back at some point, and then eventually, I think. Where else do you go for Man City, right? If you go, I don't know, people might just say they're not getting Man City because when they get to 34 and 37, they'll be fed up with them. They're in Champions League, they rotate too much. Fine, fair enough. But
I'll say that now.
Yeah, I personally would want one, and I think it makes sense. Like, I went Ake and Ederson before. It was a disaster. I learned my lesson. If I'm going to gamble, I'm going to gamble in midfield, I think, rather than that. So suddenly, if you're keeping those 2 Brighton, you're probably keeping the 2 Man United. You probably want Salah. You've already run out of spots for even that. So it is tricky, but anyway, I suppose that's too far down the line for us to worry about right now.
Yeah, the other thing you'll see some game week 27 wildcarders do will be to go for Martinelli or Odegaard in that position, but that's even more similar to the game week 26 wildcard. It's just one less player that doubles in 29. Are you going to sell all
your Arsenal? Is Saka going to go shortly?
Yeah, I'm going to sell him in 29 for Fernandes.
Okay, yeah, no, I just remembered.
Yeah.
Because I had a couple of plans I looked up on FPL Team. One of them was where I kept him on the bench just by happenstance and played him every now and then. But the games were pretty bad. I think the general vibe... chat, let me know. Is everyone else selling Saka and Odegaard? I mean, I'm selling...
It's pretty easy to, because after 29, they've got Liverpool, they've got West Ham, which is a good fixture, and they've got Southampton in 32, but will be free hitting. Then they've got Man City, then they've got Chelsea, then they've got Newcastle. Like I think it's a good time to get rid of them. So yeah, I'm definitely not worried about selling Saka.
No, I'm glad you said that because that's my plan. But it still worries me slightly because he's so damn good. I've had him literally the whole season apart from the very start when I had Jesus, and we've already been through that. That you did that, and it completely destroyed you.
Yeah. I've had him every single game week. Saka, yeah, same.
Right, let me bring up midfielders on FPL Review then. So these are the top 10 as per FPL Review for the next 9 fixtures in terms of just pure points. So not points per million, just total points earned. And it's the obvious name. Salah right at the top, Saka, Fernandes, Rashford, Matoma, McAllister, Maddison, March, Zaha and Odegaard. So, I mean, you're going by the book, that's for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned March there. I really, really like March as an option. So just like for anyone who watched the highlights of the last game as well, it could have been any of those 3 midfielders that returned. It was just a really swingy game week even within that game as well. So I wouldn't be worrying now if I had March. I wouldn't be surprised if March outscores Matoma at all. It's just, I just think again the midfield options are pretty simple, and there's not at the moment there's not that many of them because you're limited more to players who double. And so that's how I've ended up where I am.
Yeah, I went March on the wild card, but the only reason I went for March is because he was cheaper. And I've already talked about in my perfect world where I've got my perfect team and everything works fine. I needed his cheapness to make the team that I wanted. It's not going to happen, and I'm probably deluded. I think McAllister's a better pick. I also slightly punted on the fact that I think McAllister might have ended up moving back, and then I'd be depressed. And I thought if I just get March and Matoma, I know they're going to play those roles, and that's not going to change. Whereas McAllister, you are gambling slightly that he will stay in that further forward position. But as of right now, I think he's clearly the best pick personally.
Yep. Yeah.
And he probably isn't going to move back anyway. It's probably just me being paranoid, but
yeah. I don't know who other people. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what people say in the chat in terms of other midfielders they'd suggest, because I really, really don't think there are that many options.
No, I suppose you could punt on a Chelsea one, couldn't you? I mean, you could do.
Sterling.
Yeah, you could go Sterling. I mean, I don't love it, to be honest with you, but I think you could do. Outside of that, I'm just looking at the teams now. You've already mentioned Zaha. There literally isn't anything really that screams out, is there? I mean, you could maybe go for a Buendia or a Villa or something if you were desperate, but he just doesn't always play either, does he? I mean, if you were going to go for a Villa midfielder, you'd want them to be absolutely nailed. Have set pieces and pens maybe as well, or something else to go with it. Like basically be the equivalent of a Maddison to sort of go there, but they just don't have that appeal.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think it's not just the fact they're limited; it's the ones that you're limited to are really good. Yeah, that's the thing with midfielders. It's just that one. Yeah, I really like Maddison as well. I know you're not as much of a bigger fan, but the rest of the others are like two bright midfielders. Saka, Rashford, yes, it's really straightforward. There's not too much to discuss really.
No. I've brought up the forwards. You've got the default forward line there, haven't you? Tony, Kane, and who was it? Have you dropped Haaland? I've forgotten now already. Let me go back.
Yeah. Tony Kane, and Watkins.
Okay, we'll talk through the Haaland thing then, because I don't think
that's must spice. No Haaland.
It is actually. I completely missed that. I suppose maybe it's the obvious play, but maybe not.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's necessarily obvious. I just think I can afford Kane or Haaland, and I'd much rather have Kane because he plays in 28 at the moment, and then I've got a plan in place to get Haaland straight back in game week 30. So it's not that I don't want Haaland long term. I'm fully aware that Haaland can score 4 goals against Palace. He can do that, but I don't expect him to. And I think Kane was a great pick on game week 26 wildcard as well for that Wolves fixture. But yeah, it's the fact that since that Spurs fixture got put into 28, Kane just became a really obvious pick, and he's just insanely good. He's just ridiculous. And I understand that Spurs aren't playing very, very well at the moment.
That's what I was going to say. Any worries there? Because Spurs, I see people talking about it. They have been dire, haven't they?
Yeah, but they've been dire for quite a long time, and he's still been returning. I think overall, if you look at the big picture of Spurs, they're doing absolutely fine. In that you probably expect them to get to the round of 16 in the Champions League, and the fact they're fourth is really good. If they finish fourth, that's great. But actually, if you look at the last few months, particularly the last since Christmas and even just before Christmas, they've been really bad. But Kane's still been returning. He's on penalties. He's one of the best strikers in the world. So I think it's I wouldn't say it's an easy pick, because not having Haaland is a bit scary, but it's nowhere near as scary as normal, because no one's going to be, well, some people will, but very few people will captain Haaland. And I actually think you'll see a lot of people who wildcarded in 26 sell Haaland as well in 28 immediately. So it's kind of only for one game week, and I feel like I'm just getting ahead of the crowd with the transfer.
Yeah. I suppose the thing is, let me see if you planned it out actually. Do you keep Kane? Or do you get rid of? No, you get rid of straight away. Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's pretty much, if you wildcard now, the process of exchanging Kane for Salah or for Bruno, isn't it? That's pretty much the routes you want to go. Yeah. I think I prefer Salah to Kane, and I have all season. I've not owned Kane once, and I've owned Salah the entire season. And literally the first week I switch, like everyone else, Salah gets 21 points and Kane blanks. Obviously, that was going to happen. But I think after this little period where you're right, Kane is the more sensible pick right now, it very quickly becomes you'd prefer Salah over him again, wouldn't you? From 31 onwards. So, yeah, I see the route you're making to get it, though. It's on the screen there for people who are on the video version.
Yeah, and there's just so much money in the bank, because I'm going to do that Kane to Solanke move in 29. I hope I'm able to do that. So now I've got The only way I wouldn't do that, well, I could change my mind and want to go for someone else, or if I've got another problem elsewhere I need to fix. But I'd really like to do that move because then it allows me to do Tony to Haaland, Maddison to Salah. Suddenly I'm back with Salah and Haaland again, for the run in, which I really like, with their fixtures and the potential doubles for Man City and maybe a double for Liverpool. So there's a plan to get both those players back in. Yeah, so it's only really like this week there's the risk of not having Haaland in terms of how I could be like really punished for it, because I really think a lot of people will just do Haaland to Kane in 28. In fact, a lot of 26 wildcarders have them both, actually. I'm forgetting that. So yeah, probably a lot will bench him or do Haaland to like Watkins maybe.
Palace are terrible, aren't they? But Man City have not been very good away from home. They've struggled away from home. I don't know if there's anything in that. I mean, Haaland's still putting a few double-digit hauls away, like you would expect, but
yeah, he's an absolute monster.
Yeah, people are saying about Almiron in the chat. No, I think he's fine. We're a fan of Almiron on this podcast. We don't mind Almiron at all. The fact that he's not. I'm a fan of Almiron on this podcast. Sam hates his guts.
Yeah, no, I don't hate Almiron. He's a really good pick. I just bitter because I didn't get on him early enough.
Yeah, no, I haven't owned him at all. I don't think he's a really good pick. I think he's a fine pick. No. I think he's a fine pick. Yeah, he's
definitely underpriced. It was just that he was underpriced, and then he was like outperforming his underlying data for ages.
Yeah.
But actually, his underlying data was also really good. So like he's definitely improved as a player in this system at the moment this season, and probably individually as well.
Yeah, I'm not bothered about anything else apart from the fact he's cheap and his underlying data is now better than it was for a reasonably sustained period. Forget all what he's returned, he's not returning now, all that shit. I'm not going to care about that. What I will say though is that, I don't know, Newcastle fans may know better than me, but is there any danger to Almiron at all? Because we haven't really had Isak and Wilson fully fit back, and Almiron not returning points or getting goals and assists like he had. I know that might not be that important to managers, but sometimes I feel like they don't always just get, if a player's just stopped scoring and assisting, for example, they might just affect his minutes rather than anything else. They might think, I might try Isak on the right wing and Wilson up top, and then St. Maximum's come back in as well. Do we think he's just absolutely 100% nailed? Like, I wouldn't be totally confident, but I don't know enough about Newcastle to say any different, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I'll leave that to the chat because I don't think anyone else is really considering him.
How old is he, Almiron?
Oh, I don't know. He's not that old though, is he? Mid-20s, I imagine.
He looks like mid-teens. He looks like a little boy.
Let's have a look. I'm going to Google him quickly.
I'm going to guess.
He's older than I thought.
25?
Oh, that's what I said, didn't I? Mid-20s. He's 29, so a little bit older.
Is he?
Yeah.
Wow, yeah. He must have a great skincare routine.
Looks like one of the Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, just about.
Yeah. It's actually it's great to see how well he's doing. Like, even more so now. Now I know how old he is. Because I just love it when a player just randomly has a great season. Do you know what I mean? He's going to be a bit of a cult hero at Newcastle, kind of whatever he does now. 29, mad. Who knew?
Let's. I brought up the other forwards as well, so I'll read them from the top. This is per FPL review, the best ones for the next 9 weeks. So we've got Haaland at the top, Kane in second, Watkins, who's not in your team, Darwin. He is in your team. He's not in my team. Darwin, Mbomo, Solanke, Havertz, Isak, Mitrovic, and Wilson. Now, before we went live, there was one man on that list I was talking to you about. Have I not tempted you?
Havertz. Yeah, you have. Yeah, you have tempted me. Yeah, Havertz. I didn't realise until you were chatting to me, I didn't realise quite how nailed he was in terms of just how often he played 90 minutes apart from that one game he was rested in. So yeah, that tempts me, but I just love the fact that Watkins plays 90 minutes no matter what, and the fact he's on penalties. The fact Havertz is now on penalties as well is interesting. Yeah, like it's definitely tempting, but similarly, that like the reason Chilwell's numbers are probably low, predicted points are probably low, is again the fixtures aren't actually that great from like 32 onwards. Chelsea's as well. Yeah, that's, for the reason that he's really lowly owned, I guess it's tempting, but I just prefer Watkins. And the last couple of weeks, like Watkins could easily have hauled twice. I know that because I've owned him.
Yeah.
He couldn't have hauled last week, but he had one really big chance he should have scored.
One goal for a forward is often a decent haul, isn't it? It's like a 9-pointer most of the time. That's what Watkins does, though. I mean, being a data podcast, I've got a vendetta against Watkins. He destroyed my season last season, or one of the reasons.
Yeah.
Literally 8 games, 6 points I got from him from 8 games. It doesn't even sound possible, does it? There was COVID affected there as well, believe me. But yeah, I do like Watkins as a player. I think he's fantastic. And the fact he's got pens, you won't hear me say like he's not a good option. I think he's great. I just think there is an argument to look at Havertz because he is more nailed than people think. At the end of the day, Aubameyang has just not worked out at all. Roger's injured, and he pretty much. I mean, there is an argument he could play like. At the end of the day, it's Potter. He could play Sterling up there. He could play Felix, but we haven't really seen that happen. So I don't think it will happen. He's literally played 90 minutes every single week since game week 17, pretty much. It was only the Southampton game where he was rested, and he came on for 26 minutes, and they lost that 1-0. They were awful without him. It's sort of the begin. It feels like it's the beginning of the wave for Chelsea, like we already talked about. So the appeal really is the fact that also the double is much better than Watkins. We know he's on penalties because he's literally told us, and he took one the other night. I don't think he's like a standout striker who's just going to start banging in 2 or 3 goals either. By any, there's plenty of other options that could steal points from him, and his actual point returns, if you look at such things, are woeful. I get it, but it feels like again one where I would want to take a punt on Chelsea somewhere. I never wasn't happy on the fullbacks for the reasons we've already mentioned. Maybe Havertz is the one where you could say, well, at least he's definitely going to play.
Yeah. His X-Mins I just looked then are on FPL review as 78. So obviously that's
pretty good, yeah, for a full.
That's general. Do you think they should be even higher than that? Sorry, they're 73. Do you think they should be high? Yeah, do you think they should be nearer to maybe like 75 plus?
Well, I mean, he hasn't really ever got subs. I mean, you can look at he does get subbed, but it's like the very last minute. So I look at here, game week 17, 90. So I'm just going to work up from game week 17. So we've got 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 88, 80 versus Liverpool, 90, 90. The Southampton game, which was 26 minutes, came on, 90, 90.
Yeah, and on review, so his X-Men's are 73 as default.
So it seems low, yeah. Seems low.
Reece James is a 74.
No, that doesn't feel right to me. No.
Yeah. So that's something to consider, definitely. I might have to have a look at maybe adjusting his minutes and then running it and see what review thinks. But my instinct is just the fact Chelsea aren't creating anything like at all. I know they're massively underperforming their XG in terms of their missing chances, and we're usually way more concerned with creating chances, but they're not creating a lot either. They're creating
they
1 XG per game.
Creating that much, but the punt is that they will start doing it in the new setup, isn't it, and the way they're playing.
Yeah.
Also, just a nod to Havertz, because now we've got it, so I'm going by the FPL website here. His expected goal involvement is actually okay in these, like, they had been dreadful not scoring a goal. But he's got 1.22 versus Palace, 0.54 versus Fulham, 0.40 versus Liverpool, 0.59 versus Fulham, 0.66 versus Southampton in the 20 minutes that he played, 0.44 versus Leeds last week. So it's not like that's bad at all as him as an individual.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not just saying. Do you know when someone suggests something, you say, "Oh yeah, we could do," or I'll think about it.
No, I'm not trying to force you into making the switch live. I'm just making the case for him. And if I was in this position, would I pick Havertz or Watkins? Like, Watkins is easily just the safer option. I think. I think we already mentioned it, right? I know we don't go different for different sake. You want to pick the best team you possibly can moving forward. But given the pathway is now pretty straight and obvious for everyone because of the disappointment of the way the fall and the way that the wild card should probably be played around here, the path is already set out for most of us. It feels like the most of your rank earning relative to the other good players, not the casuals necessarily, it's probably already been done. It's already been made. Like, you already had that period probably since the World Cup until now, where depending on who you picked and who you did had the biggest effect on your rank over anything. Yeah. And from now moving forward, it's going to be very difficult to find these different players. So I think Havertz being at 3% owned over the likes of Watkins, like, I don't feel like that's a massive punt. Like, if Watkins goes mad, it's like, I don't think it's going to affect you. I think Havertz, that's the kind of thing I think where I'd be more tempted.
Yep, no, I get that completely. Yeah, if I think it's really, really close and I can't decide, that definitely might be the kind of thing that sways me. But at the moment, because of what I mentioned before about the fact they're not creating chances,
Yeah, it's fair
Yeah,
enough.
yeah. But no, he's definitely a far better option than I thought he was, and I hadn't even considered him before you mentioned it. So I think that's a really, really good suggestion. And with Tony's just obvious, isn't he?
Yeah, he is for
Rather
now.
than,
I think you have to get
yeah,
rid of him pretty quickly afterwards, don't you? Just the double,
Tony to
the yellows for the
Tony.
ban, the ban from betting. I don't even
That's
think
why.
he's.
That's why. Sorry, mate. Go on.
No, I was just saying, I don't think like. I think he's fine to hold after 29 if he was to continue playing. Like the games aren't that awful, but I just think there are probably slightly better options. Like there is a. It seems like there's a reasonable amount of forwards at the moment, isn't there, that you could possibly go to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's one of the reasons again I want to probably do that Solanke move, although it seems mental to do into Solanke just for the extra fixture, and then it allows me to do Tony to Haaland. Just seems like really
Yeah.
good timing
I
to do
think
that move.
I think we should talk about the Solanke thing actually, because we mentioned this just before we came on, and he won't be a popular pick because there are other forwards that are better,
And he plays for Bournemouth.
and,
Yeah,
he plays for Bournemouth.
yeah,
But his double's good, and then after that, I think the real appeal of him is the fact that he's cheap and you can bench him, and then that means that you can play your five midfielders more often, and that's a struggle to try and work in. Again, if you go on the FPL team, it's hard. Like your bench is just ridiculous every week, and Solanke kind of helps you a little bit because it enables you to play, for example, Bruno and Rashford most weeks with your double Brighton midfielders most weeks that you need to anyway in the doubles and stuff. Obviously, occasionally you could bench one, and then you maybe have that Salah or that Saka as the other person, and then you can have your two up front and just have three defenders. Otherwise, it's quite hard, I think, to sort of to play without that. And then also, yeah, if you want to afford, say, Trent, Salah, Darwin later on, it becomes hard to do that. So I think Solanke does serve he's got almost a hidden value. I think is what he enables elsewhere in your team.
yeah, yeah. Well, Alex in the chat has been mentioning Solanke, saying that I could just have him instead of Watkins from the beginning, and that's interesting because this week I'm actually going to, I think, with that draft, I'm pretty sure I'm benching Watkins. I think he's my first sub.
Yeah.
Yeah, he will be because I'll be starting Rashford and Saka, both Brighton midfielders. Yeah, and the three strikers. Yeah, so I'll be the two strikers. So I'll be benching Watkins this week. I think. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. Yeah, because I'll be playing who I'll be benching. Yeah, I think so. Anyway, if that is the case, then Bournemouth and Villa actually play each other in 28. Again, you'd prefer to have Watkins, wouldn't you? But it's not a huge difference. And then actually Solanke actually does have the better double of the two. So I could do that. And although I don't need to do that to be able to afford to get Bruno, like Alex is suggesting, it does still save me a transfer.
Yeah, the appeal of Watkins is, for me, the fact he plays Bournemouth in 28 at home, which is a better fixture than Solanke's. Obviously, Solanke's playing away to Villa, so they're playing each other. So, yeah, it's not a terrible fixture, but Watkins is better. And then in 30, he's home to Forest, which Forest away are pretty terrible. That's fine. But other than that, I'd much prefer Solanke for the reasons I've mentioned.
Yeah.
And he has got a better double.
That's interesting. So you'd go for Solanke or Havertz from the beginning?
Yeah.
Instead of Watkins,
I would, to make a difference. I think the Watkins is the obvious one. But Review prefers Watkins, and who am I to argue? So...
Yeah, it's because that, I guess, is the blank fixture against Bournemouth are so bad defensively, aren't they? Yeah, but it prefers both Solanke and Havertz to Watkins in 29. Yeah.
Yeah, see, Spartan's saying me to Pinnock and Watkins to Solanke, and you're good to go for the future moves. Yeah, see, that's more like that's what I was thinking, but we'll see.
Yeah. So you think you'd go with Solanke rather than Havertz, or it would be one of those two, basically?
Yeah, it's hard for me to say until I've sat down and started looking at it. But for my team personally, like I was looking at how I can get Havertz in, and I can do it, but it then affects me later on where I'd probably have to take hits or whatever. But this is again if everything went perfectly as I imagined. And so just going to Solanke just saves a load of headaches. So in reality, I'll probably do that. And then what normally happens is like players like Saliba, Brennan Johnson, Havertz, who I've said I think are going to do well, I don't end up getting, and they do well, and I just beat myself up. So that's probably what's going to actually happen here.
Yeah. Alex is saying that it's not that you can't afford Bruno, but you will want Bruno to sell it after that. Yeah, it's a good point. I still already plan to get Salah anyway, to do Saka to Salah instead. But yeah, either way, it's freeing up money, isn't it? And it might allow me Trent as well, for example. So yeah, it is a good point. Like a long term, just in saving a transfer by going straight to Solanke could be a good idea. Free up the money, save the transfer, and that's just another move you can make a week earlier, which could be a player like Trent, for example. in, I don't know, 30, in 31 or something like that.
There you go. I like it. What about
Yeah.
Mitrovic? Have people got plans for Mitrovic in the chat? Because he's been annoying as hell. There's no two ways about it. But he's run from 29. I don't think anyone's going to get him in 29 because there's players with doubles, but it's away to Bournemouth. And then after that, it's home to West Ham, away to Everton, home to Leeds in 32, where maybe you free hit anyway, away to Aston Villa. Then he's got a double, which is a terrible double, but it is a double, and there might not be that many in 34. Man City and Liverpool. And then he's got 3 great games. Leicester at home, away to Southampton, home to Palace. So I think he is just a really tempting option for that run. But I don't know. When I looked at my team and planning it, I couldn't work out how to get him in easily because there's other good forwards like we've mentioned that also go along there. You're almost certainly going to have Haaland throughout most of that period. Or get him back off at Southampton, I would have thought.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're probably going to end up having either Watkins or Solanke. And then Darwin Núñez becomes a pretty good pick, I think, as well, from 31 onwards. I think it's someone that I'd probably want. And obviously Kane is just, you could just hold him the entire time anyway if you wanted to. But Mitrovic, I guess, will be appealing to most people for that run. Maybe, if they can forgive him for his past sins.
Yeah, I guess I've not really considered him because if I do go for him, it'll be a later transfer in. It's just it's more of a long-term thing. But yeah, I would love to have, eventually have Darwin back, definitely. Darwin, Mo, Haaland for the run-in. Yeah, I agree with everything you just said.
I wonder what it will look like when Liverpool get... I mean, I don't know if he will ever get up to speed fully this season again because he had a bad injury, didn't he? But if Diaz is back to his best, Núñez is playing arguably his best football from the left wing. I don't know, that's debatable. He's played very well up front as well. But you would imagine it would probably be Darwin Núñez up front with Diaz on the left and Salah on the right. We haven't actually seen that yet, really, have we? So
yeah, depends how Gakpo does between now and then, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, one for the future, I guess.
Yeah. Should we just chat about captaincy?
Yeah, why not? I mean, I don't have McAllister, but if I had McAllister, he'd be my captain.
Would he? Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think he would be. I think the way Brighton are playing, I think the games that they've got, the position he's in, it's been mentioned a million times. Like, his historic data is not great, but the fact that ever since he's been in that role, he has been fantastic. I think we do have to react a little bit to it. It is similar to almost like the Gundogan thing with Man City, where that's almost like a positional change has caused him suddenly getting high volume. You know, you can't say for sure that that's going to continue because it is a short sample, but it would be pretty coincidental at this point that it was just Jam that he turned out his best numbers from moving into that position straight away. So yeah, I think he's just clearly the obvious pick if you've got him. I wouldn't even debate it. Like Tony is fine. I get Tony. I think that's cool. Maybe it's part of the experience is owning Tony myself. He's just been a painful hold the whole season. He just doesn't seem to... I keep seeing this mention of he's a talisman and all this stuff, and it's like, well, yeah, he does score the majority of goals for him, but trust me, there was a period for Brentford where they had like 7-8 games where I had him, and he literally scored like 1 goal. There's some of the games were winning like 4-0 and he wasn't getting a goal or an assist in it, and Boma was doing everything. So I'm not sure I'd buy any of that talk particularly. The appeal is obviously the fact that he's going to play all the games and he's going to be on penalties, so I think he's fine. But I just prefer Brighton as a team, so I think I'd go McAllister.
Yeah, I'm on Tony at the moment, so slightly different. But I just think it's a lot closer than you do. I guess they're both on penalties. Like Tony, you just know you're going to get 90 minutes out of him in every game. Mm-hmm. And I just think Everton is still awful, and it's the fact he's got Everton and Southampton. I think they're both just horrendous teams. I know Brighton's is good as well, but I slightly prefer the Brentford fixtures. But I think it's close.
It's 100% close. I think Review now prefers Tony. I think I saw it was on Matoma at the beginning of the week. I don't know if it's now Tony. I haven't run it recently, but it's very close. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I think you can make good reasons for both. I think there's similar reasons for both as well, like good underlying numbers. Both on penalties, both good fixtures. Yeah, but I just wouldn't discuss anyone outside of them really, outside of a Brighton midfielder or Tony. I wouldn't bother going for anyone else personally. But I mean, if people want to, they can. But I wouldn't bind, even if you got Salah, I wouldn't captain him over any of those players at all.
No, and obviously March, Matoma, or any others could easily do fantastic. It's 1 week or 2 weeks of football. The variance is incredible. They are good picks in their own right. But I just think it's a no-brainer to go for the player who's just got similar stats, but then also has the penalties on top. I just don't know why you would do that to yourself, particularly. I think, if Matoma scores more, or whoever the other one you've probably got from Brighton, then so be it. I still think the sensible play is to pick the penalty taker between whichever one you go for.
Mm.
If you're trying to be different for the sake of it, for the reason of catching up, and you want to increase your variance and all that, then I don't particularly have a problem with it. But I think if you're just trying to play for the most points, you probably go for Matoma or McAllister or Tony.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's probably not even anything to discuss with regards to Man City, is there, this week, really?
No, I don't think anyone's looking to buy them, are they? For obvious reasons, probably getting rid of them or anything, and then getting them back later. So there's not much to talk about. There's no point. I'll just do my usual thread. If anyone wants to DM me and ask me, then they can do. But I'll put up the usual thread. Or if anyone's got a question in the chat, they can put it in quickly. But yeah,
there probably will be the odd person who's like planning to wildcard in 28 and has like held Mahrez, for example, last week, and they just want to get your thoughts on that. So yeah, I'm sure there will be people who want to know that. I'm just looking at some of the chats about captaincy. FPL Spartan says Tony has a 73% goal involvement when Brentford score. Points shared between Brighton and Hove Albion players. So he's going for Tony.
I wish I benefited from that. Believe me.
Same reason as Spartans. He's probably my only Brentford coverage in 27. I won't have McAllister, but might have captained him instead of Tony. Yeah, I think it's just it's pretty clear that it's close, isn't it? To be honest. So that means that one of them will get 3 penalties in 2 games, and the other one will get injured after 20 minutes.
Yeah, I don't believe this is a thing, right? Because I do not believe it works like this. But Tony has. If you go look at his returns and you look at him, he is a very strange player. It's like he'll just blank so many weeks and then just hit like a 15-pointer or a 12-pointer. Like a lot of his points have come in clusters. I don't believe that's a thing at all. I think it's just the fact that he's a good pick and his expected goal involvement's good. Like, ignore that. But it is just really strange how it's worked. And I suppose maybe a lot of strikers are like that. You could argue Haaland's been a bit like that more recently anyway. Obviously, it was just returning every week to begin with. But yeah, I think with him, there's been just these huge clusters. Usually, sort of, if he gets a goal and gets a penalty in a game, he gets his sort of 12 or 13. And otherwise, it's like a 1 or a 2 every single time. And it would not surprise me at all if Tony just got 2 and 1 in these two games. The guy, I'm having a problem this season with vendettas against players, and he's another one who's just rubbed me up the wrong way. I held him for a really good run of 4 games when no one else had him, and he just did nothing. So frustrating.
Yeah, I don't know if I can't remember owning Tony this season. Was there a time when lots of people owned him? This season,
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not sure. Maybe at the beginning, but
yeah, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I don't think I've owned him this season, but I could be wrong. Stefan says, "What's Tony's yellow card situation now?" He's actually on eight yellow cards and he's 10 for a ban. So for the upcoming double, it's not a concern, which is good.
Yeah, I think.
But obviously, there's a chance he wouldn't play in 28 if he got booked in both games.
Yeah, I'm not sure what game week it goes to. Colm's in the chat. I saw him do it. I think he did a tweet about it earlier. I have to remind myself, but yeah, you don't need to worry about it right now.
It goes to the end of the season, doesn't it? It's not the midway point, the reset period.
I don't know. That's what I thought, but then I saw a tweet where I don't know. Maybe I confused myself that you had to make it to a certain game week. But
in the Championship, if you get 5 yellows, it's a 1-game ban. If you then get to 10, it's a 2-game ban. I don't know if that's the same in the Premier League. So would he miss 2 games if he gets to a 10th yellow?
I think so. I think that's pretty certain. But I think there might be another cut-off. Colm or someone in the chat saved me from embarrassing myself. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe I'm making it up.
Either way, for captaincy, it's not something to consider, thankfully, because it would have made captaincy a lot easier if he was 1 yellow card away from a ban, just to not risk it, basically.
Yeah. I suppose that is the other factor, though. He is a striker that does seem to get yellow cards. Like, should we factor that in? It seems to have just been ignored. Like, the fact that he could get a ban, fine, but he seems to pick them up quite regularly. 8's quite a lot for a forward. Like, do you factor that in when you pick him as a captain over a double? Do you think it's just not worth bothering about? Because a yellow card as a striker, well, I suppose there's any position, 1 point, it can be have quite an impact. The yellow cards are quite devastating in this game to bonus points, aren't they?
Yeah. There you go. The cut-off is 32.
Oh, yeah. So I was right. There was another cut-off. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't know that. Yeah, interesting. Great. Is there anything else you wanted to chat about, Luke?
No, I think that's it. We've been going an hour and 20, haven't we? So I think we'll wrap it up.
Well, what are your plan moves? Are you planning to just roll?
I'm just going to roll. Yeah, I'm just going to roll. Like I said, I don't have McAllister, so the sensible play is to go Tony. We'll find out whether I can do that to myself again, or whether I'll just try and increase my variance and go with Matoma or March or something crazy. But I'm not sure yet.
And off the back of this, like I think it's likely that Chilwell will be my latest draft. I've had my mind changed. I've had my mind changed on that. I'm pretty sure I'm still going to go with Maddison though. Yeah, and I'll take time to consider whether I just start with Solanke or go for Havertz as well. They're the kind of 3 areas I'm now kind of thinking through a bit more.
Yeah, and Walter says both bench boost 29. Yeah, that's the plan.
Bench boost 29. Yeah.
I will say on that actually before we go, I think if we get to 29 and something's happened where there's an injury or a player's been dropped or whatever, a snowstorm, whatever, yeah. Obviously it's that bad, then no one's going to hit it. But I wouldn't force it, because having looked at that FPL team and gone forward to 34 and 37 these other weeks, there's so many weeks when my bench just looks ridiculously good, and sometimes it will have to come to the point where it might even have an extra fixture on there as well, like possibly a player with a double. Like especially the goalkeeper, that most of us will have like 2 of them maybe. So I think that will be an argument where at that point you can probably comfortably save it, and wouldn't be surprised at all if you've got like a Brentford defender, for example, that you're bench boosting in 29. Those games aren't good enough, I would say, where he would outscore like, I don't know, a Slanky home to Leicester later on or something. It's like relatively close, I would say. So I don't think it has to be forced.
Yeah. Panthers desperate for me to pick Salah. Salah Old Spice pick to boost 29 numbers. Old Spice. I prefer the new Spice of Watkins.
I think you're going to have to go back through the chat. There's been lots of comments here on how you could change and have a look at it. So yeah, have a look and see if there's anything good in it.
Yeah, I'll definitely be reading that through. And yeah, feel free. I'll stick around in the chat as well just to answer any questions people have via text as well. So feel free to stick around, and thanks for tuning in, everyone. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. If you could hit like, that would be most appreciative. Put any more comments that you could afterwards on the video and share it for us. That would be most appreciated. We'll put out a tweet for the podcast and stuff. And thanks for joining. We shall see you on the next one.
Great. Yeah, thanks very much, guys. See you soon.